since you guys are my second family, there's one thing I need to address that I really don't like. It's when a ate, kuya, or an elder suddenly looks up at you guys from across the room in a room full of crowded people and then locks eyes with you and asks you this one question that actually makes you shiver, and then you don't know what to say, you start stammering, and that question is, sinong crush mo? No, because growing up in the youth, I've always had kuyas, especially Kuya Pierce. For those of you who know Kuya Pierce, he would always go up to me, put his arm around me, and then look down because he's so tall. And then he'll just say, sinong crush mo? And I don't know how to answer. Because there's only two reactions to this. It's either one, you go blank, you go quiet. I'm very good at that. I just go quiet. Or you start shaking because you actually do have a crush, and then you get kilig. And then everyone else who sees you also gets kilig. For those of you who don't know what kilig means, it's okay. I also don't know. It's actually in the Oxford Dictionary I searched. It's a feeling of elation or excitement when something romantic happens. So think of it like this. Like a Korean drama or a teleserye. You see the main characters suddenly slowly running to each other, and then it's in slow motion. Then all of a sudden you hear the background music, kung wala, and then after that, and that feeling you're feeling when you're watching all this happen is kilig. And I thought, in my understanding of the word kilig, it doesn't actually have to be romantic, does it? Okay, let me tell you a story about my first love. Don't tell my parents, even though it's recorded, please. So, back in secondary school, I was introduced to this girl. And at first, I didn't even want to know this girl. It was weird. But the more I got to know her, the more I understood her, the more we clicked. And we figured, hey, we're really good together. Yeah. And then we discovered more, hey, we like the same kind of music. Oh, that's cool. And then we even performed on stage, not just outside, but even on this stage, for you guys who don't know. I'm sure, for those of you who've known me long enough, I'm sure you guys have seen it. But just to show you guys, her name is Cynthia, and she's my flute. And I had to take care of her so much. I had to clean her, I spent long hours practicing with her just to play music in concerts. And the thing was, I really loved it. I hated the flute at first because it's the least manliest instrument in the world. I mean, look at it. It's so small. Look at me. I'm so small. You can't even see. I couldn't find any other picture. But as I learned to love the flute, I started to do more crazy things. See? It's the feeling of love. Even when you're having romantic feelings for somebody else, that feeling of love will make you do crazy things. You'll do crazy gestures for that person. You'll go on dates, or you'll spend more time with them. But eventually, for example, in my journey with the flute, I eventually started getting tired of it. All the long practices, instead of me enjoying it, it became me just getting through it. I treat it as a checklist. And sometimes it can be the same with love romantically. Have you guys watched Descendants of the Sun? Anybody? No, don't woo, because the couple actually got divorced like a few weeks ago. So it's true that sometimes love can die down and it can lead to divorce. So I thought to myself as I was given this opportunity to share with you guys what to share. And I thought, is it possible for our love of God to die down as well? Is it possible for our first love to not be our first? But the first love there is actually something else instead of God. So that's why I wanted to share. And I've entitled our sharing today, our conversation, as Returning to First Love. Because it's always possible to go back to loving God again. And that's what He wants us to do. And I've been searching for a long time about how to, a text that can explain this. And my dad, Ramon Sr., actually gave me this verse, Revelations 2, verse 1 to 7, which we'll go through together, about the church of Ephesus. Because the church of Ephesus was a really upstanding Christian church in an environment that is totally wrong. But Jesus still had something to say to them, something that was really important to Him. And if there's one thing I want everybody to leave today with, it's this: our first love drives the purpose of our service. So as we continue, let's open up our Bibles, electronic or otherwise, and please stick with me because I'm going to be talking really fast because I'm nervous. But let's turn to Revelation chapter 2, verse 1 to 7 together, and I'll go through with it. Go through it with you. Okay, so let's start verse 1. Write this letter to the angel of the church in Ephesus. So a bit of a background on the church in Ephesus. We went through the book of Ephesians like a few months ago, if I'm not wrong, but just to give a recap. Ephesus was this church in Rome, not a church, is this place in Rome where it's a port city, kind of like Singapore right now, where we actually see trade routes go past Singapore. So because of it, it's actually really fruitful, really economically good because of all the good trade. And not only that, because it's a port city, everyone went to visit it, and now it's culturally diverse during the time. Some people would say it's second only to Rome in terms of economy and culture. Okay, so economically, they were rich. Culturally, they were rich. But Ephesus was also known for something else, and that is actually the worship of Diana. Diana worship, or Artemis worship, if you're Greek like that, is basically this idol, this goddess who is the idol actually is a lady with many breasts who is a goddess of fertility or childbirth, if I'm not wrong. And the way they worship this goddess is they have these temple, and inside the temple is this priestesses. And these priestesses were also prostitutes. The way they worship their goddess is they would have orgies inside these temples, and that's how they connect to their goddess. That's another thing they were famous for, and people traveled all over the world just to go to Ephesus and to worship Diana as well. To them, all of this was A-okay. All these sinning was just normal to them. It's normal, it's a day-to-day life to them. So they were economically rich, but morally they were bankrupt. Sin to them was a normal everyday thing. Now we have to keep this in mind as Jesus continues to talk to the church in Ephesus, because this puts into context what they did and how they were Christian in that kind of environment. Okay? So the second part of verse 1, this is the message from the one who holds the 7 stars in his right hand and walks among the 7 gold lampstands. Now what does 7 stars and 7 gold lampstands mean? In Revelation, 7 churches were mentioned because of their significance, and these 7 stars were the pastors. It represents the pastors and the leaders of the church. Now, the 7 gold lampstands were the churches itself. So what is Jesus trying to say by saying he holds the 7 stars in his right hand and he walks among the 7 gold lampstands? It's basically Jesus saying, hey, I'm in control of the leaders. Nothing happens without me doing it. And the second part, when he says he walks among the 7 gold lampstands, is basically him saying, hey, I know everything that's going on around you. I know everything that's going on. I am central to whatever you guys are doing. So he's basically, the reason why he's telling the church of Ephesus this is basically to say, hey, look at me. My name's Jesus. Listen up. This is important. It's just an intro to who is talking to them. So as Jesus goes on to continue, he starts describing what the church of Ephesus did. And he said in verse 2, I know all the things you do. I have seen your hard work and your patient endurance. Imagine now, we are all in the church of Ephesus. We've all had to work hard to be a Christian in an environment that is morally wrong. You have to think, how hard was it to live in an area like that? Where if you were a fresh convert in Ephesus, you would actually have family members or friends who were still in Diana worship, and you would have to live among them still while being a Christian. All the hard work you had to do. So imagine Jesus suddenly going up to us and saying, I know all the things you had to do, all the hard work and your patient endurance. That's such a sigh of relief for all of us. Is Jesus saying that I not only know all the things you did in public, I know all the hard work and the toil you did in private. This is big for them as well. And the second part of this verse, he says, I know you don't tolerate evil people. You have examined the claims of those who say they are apostles but are not. You have discovered they are liars. Now, when Jesus says, I know you don't tolerate evil people, and you think about the context of Ephesus, the environment being morally bankrupt, that kind of means that whenever they see something wrong, they have to call it out. They were really outspoken Christians. With the environment that's so wrong to them, they were the only ones who were willing to speak up and say, hey, you're doing wrong. And not only that, he said, you have examined the claims of those who say they are apostles but are not. You have discovered they are liars. Back in Ephesians chapter 4, if I'm not wrong, Paul actually wrote this letter, and Jesus was saying, I have appointed you leaders and elders to guide you and to build you up so that you will stay strong in your faith and you will not be swayed by anything else. So, and we can see when Jesus was sharing with them that it's true. They have succeeded in defending themselves against false teachers and false apostles. That shows that they are not only outspoken Christians, but they are also knowledgeable and solid in their faith. And that's one thing I think all of us should be. We need to know our doctrine, know our faith. A few weeks ago, actually, the youth have went through a series by Jai, who went through with us a few arguments to prove an existence of a God. Now, why do we have to go through that? Well, that's because our faith has to be an informed faith. It cannot be blind faith. Imagine if we have a blind faith in the world we have today, or in an environment like Ephesus, our doctrine would just fall. Our belief would fall if we do not know our own faith. So I believe this is important, especially in an environment like Ephesus, or even an environment where we are now. Because if you look in the world around us, it's so easy to hear the thoughts and opinions of others. And if we are not solid in the truth, we will just believe anything we hear. It's so easy. So we have to know and be solid in our faith as well. But Jesus just wasn't done just complimenting them. No. He also said this, you have patiently suffered for me without quitting. Now, let's put ourselves back into the shoes of the church in Ephesus. We are in a place that is morally bankrupt. We have to be strong in our faith against all these adversities, all these people. And it's hard. It's really hard. Most people would just give up. But Jesus has found them to be strong-willed, to patiently suffered for me without quitting. They were unstoppable in their doctrine and in their defending of the faith. We have to be like that too, especially in a place where we are now. Because if you look in the world right now, there are debates going on about abortion laws or gay marriages. And if we are not strong in our faith, we will quit. Yeah. So after hearing all of this, the church in Ephesus was probably like, "Oh, Jesus has read through, has seen all the things we've done. He knows all the things we've done. He knows that we can't tolerate evil people. We are good. Jesus has been praising us. This is all good." But if you notice, like, you know how people compliment you a lot, like, "Ay, RJ, you're so hardworking. Ay, ang guapo mo." And then all of a sudden they hear that, but there's a but after this that Jesus has to address. And it's really important. "Yet I hold this against you. You have forsaken the love you had at first." Let's take a step back and think about this. The first line, "Yet I hold this against you." This kind of means, to me at least, this is me analyzing it in a literature context, the word "yet" means everything that Jesus has said before this, it doesn't matter if they did not have love for him in the first place. All those hard work, all that patiently suffering, all of that meant nothing if they did not have love for him, if they did not forsake their love for him. This is heavy. You just heard Jesus praising you and telling you that you've done good works for me, but you don't have love for me. How devastated was the church at that time? How devastated was Jesus? Because if you think about it, in a relationship with a God or a being that is constant, that is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and whose love is overflowing and will never fail us, who do you think moved in the relationship? The Almighty Being or us? Clearly it's us. We're the ones who moved in this relationship. We're the ones who forsook our, is that the right word? Yeah. Who have forsaken our first love. How does this happen? They were so active in their ministry, so active in their walk with God. How does this happen? And I thought to myself, because there was a time when I also felt like I didn't love God as much. And I thought to myself, why did that happen? Even though I was in so many ministries. I was in music, I was teaching kids, I was in the youth ministry. But even though I was serving in all those ministries and I thought I was being faithful, I still felt like the purpose behind all of it was missing. What was missing? It was my love for God. I had to analyze myself. What changed? It was because I put something else on top. Usually for me, when I was playing the flute, the way I lost my love for the flute was because I got busy with schoolwork. That's such a good excuse. I was so busy with schoolwork. Because of that, I neglected my practices. I neglected listening to music that I used to love. And because of that, my love for the flute died down. If we put it into this context, their love for God died down because they were so focused into the things they were doing. They were so focused into defending the faith, so focused in pointing out false teachings from teachers that they forgot the main reason they did it in the first place was because of their love for God. So if we don't have that, then what's the point? Even Paul said himself, if I do not have love, then it's pointless. So where do we go from here? Because for sure, some of us might be feeling that our love for God is not on top. If we're not feeling it, we might feel it in the future. So where do we go from there? What do we do? Jesus immediately went into a 3-part plan for everybody to analyze and to return to their first love. Because even though our first love was not God, He still wants us back. He's the one who's been working in this relationship full time, and He wants us to go back to Him. So the first part of His 3-part plan was, consider how far you have fallen. Basically meaning, remember. Remember where you fell. So what this means for us is basically for us to stop, examine where we are now, examine the things that we're doing now, examine what we're doing and if it's still purposeful and if it's still with the love of God. And then we have to look back at how we first started. How were we like when we were first killing for God, you know? How were we like when we first discovered our love for God? How exciting was it? How purposeful was our service? How purposeful was our walk with God? And we have to think back on the small things we did as well. For me, it was the prayers and devotions and the quiet times that I dedicated just for God. And I set time apart just for God, just to spend time with Him. But then as the days went by, I got distracted by other stuff, either depressing things or even blessings, because that happens. Sometimes we take blessings that God has given us and we focus so much on it, we love it more than God itself. We start loving the blessing more than God. We have to consider how far you have fallen and knowing what made the difference. What changed from when we were before and now? What happened in between? And then the next part of Jesus' 3-part plan was to repent. See, we cannot just look back at how far we have fallen and realize that our love for God is not on top and not repent. And we cannot just hide behind the bushes again when we realize we're naked. No, we have to go to Jesus again. We need to make that 180-degree turn back to Him. Because if not, we're just going to be insane and just keep going and hope that something will happen. The definition of insanity is us just doing the same thing over and over again, hoping that something will change. That doesn't make sense. We have to make a change. The third part of Jesus' 3-part plan is to do the things you did at first. What does this mean? Well, you've already examined what changed. You've already examined what you did at first. You've already repented. Now is the action. You have to do something. In a relationship, you can't just think about all of these things and then say, oh, I've done wrong. Okay. And then you won't do it. It doesn't make sense. You have to go back to basics. You have to do your devotions again. You have to have quiet times again. For everyone is different. Everyone feels God's love in a different way. You just have to find out what it is. You have to examine yourself and you have to go back to it. Now, for the church of Ephesus, when they were probably listening to this, they were kind of sad, don't you think? We've done all these good things and God said that we don't have love for Him anymore. What do we do? And when Jesus gave these 3-part planning, cool. So there is a possibility to go back. But Jesus added this part in the same verse, the very same verse. If you do not repent, I will come to you and remove your lampstand from its place. It's just taking it out. Now, in my own understanding, this isn't a scolding. This isn't God saying, because you don't have love for me, as you've forsaken your first love, I will remove your lampstand. No. He gave the 3-part plan first, and then he told them the warning. What does this mean? Jesus was basically saying, please come back to first love. I've given you the steps. Please do them, or else I have to take your lampstand. This is not a scolding. This is a plea. This is Jesus begging us to return to first love. That just shows how important it is to Jesus that we put him on top of everything. Because when we put first love first, everything we do will be an outpour of that love. When we love God first, the more we love God, the more we love our brothers and sisters. That's how they identify us as Christians. The more we love God, the more our service and our walk with God is purposeful. That's how we grow, because of our love of God. If we don't repent, I will come to you and remove your lampstand from its place. And then Jesus went to mention the Nicolaitans, and at first I had no idea what Jesus meant. It's kind of like Jesus was talking, then he went on a tangent, and then it went off. But the more I studied about the Nicolaitans, let me just explain. They were Christians. They were Christians who still did pagan acts. What does this mean? They still did Diana worship. They still ate food that was meant for idols. But they did all this while calling themselves Christians. Now, what was Jesus trying to say when he said, "But this is in your favor, you hate the evil deeds of the Nicolaitans just as I do"? What is he trying to say? Jesus is trying to say, you are distinct from the Nicolaitans. Nicolaitans probably never had love for me in the first place, but you guys still do. It's just not on top. So there's still a chance to go back to me. Don't give up yet. You can still come back. Now, he finishes off with this. Anyone with ears to hear must listen to the Spirit and understand what he is saying to the churches. To everyone who is victorious, I will give fruit from the tree of life in the paradise of God. Now, in the Bible, when they say listen, it's not just one ear in, one ear out. No. It's one ear in, and then you have to do something. This is a call to action as well. Anyone with ears to hear must listen to the Spirit and understand what he is saying to the churches. And he already gave an answer to what will happen when we return to first love. To everyone who is victorious, I will give fruit from the tree of life in the paradise of God. You've seen the youth serving today. You've seen them serve with all their heart. Some of them even volunteered to try a new instrument even. All of this just because they love God so much they want to serve. That kind of heart is what Jesus wants from us. Some of us might be feeling like in their ministry that there's no purpose behind it. Or in their walk with God, you've lost the kilig moments when you spend time with God. When you just listen to Christian music and then all of a sudden the tears start flowing. You've lost those moments. But Jesus is saying there's always a way back. When we put our first love first, it's so much easier to find purpose in things. Our first love drives the purpose of our service. Yeah. So we have to work on this, because if we do feel this way, we do feel like our love for God is not at first, if our first love is not first, we have to go back. Because Jesus is putting in all the work, guys. In a relationship, he's the one giving 100%, and we're like, whatever. Sometimes it's like that. And every day we have to go back to him. I remember Pastor Butch mentioning some time ago about how we have to plow our fields every day to receive the word. This is a similar thing. Every day we have to look in the mirror and say, we need to put our first love first. So that everything we do after that will be an expression of that love. It will drive the purpose of our service, drive our walk with God, drive our ministry. Everything we do is because of our love for God. All our decisions, everything we do. So it's simple, really. We have to remember to return to our first love daily. 3 things: remember, repent, and do. There's a psalm I really loved whenever I felt depressed, Psalm 42. It's mentioning how the psalmist was mentioning how he felt so downcast. That psalm was actually famous for, "As the deer pants for water, so my soul thirsts for thee." I don't like that verse because it's too Instagrammy. I focus on, "Why are you downcast, O my soul? Why so disturbed within me?" He repeats it 3 times. There's a reason for that, because he's really trying to drag his soul up from that. And that sometimes we have to do that as well. We need to drag our soul up. Why are you downcast? Can't you see how amazing our God is? Some of us might be feeling like that. Some of us might not be feeling like, oh, I still put God on top. I'm still good. I still love God. We're close. But there will be times when you'll be challenged in our walk. You might be in an Ephesus right now where they are morally bankrupt and you're struggling with that. There will be times when you might not put God on top anymore. So if we leave today, I hope everybody remembers this challenge to remember, repent, and do. Remember where you have fallen, repent from your false doing, and then do the actions you did before so we can return to first love. Because that's all Jesus wants from us right now. As I'm closing and we listen to the song, I pray that everybody just reflects on their own walk with God. We might be feeling tired with our walk. We might be feeling apathetic even. We have to remember that if we don't put our first love first, Jesus will take away the lampstand. Our first love has to drive the purpose of our service. That service will produce fruit.
This is all I want. That the love I have for you
I missed so many points.
doesn't fade along with you. Can you help with that? The reason that I ask, I've seen far too many friends walk away and not come back. I want more than that. I won't wash away like branches in rain. I'd rather be kindling in the light. Set me on fire like I've never known. I wanna love you more as life goes on. So